Welcome everyone to today's Active Learning webinar, Part 4, Concept Development Through Experience Books. And now let's welcome Kathee Scoggin.
I guess I could put my my mic on. I guess it's the last week and I'm a little on the tired side, so I apologize. But I am here and I'm glad to see all of you here. What we want to do is finish up this week on issues about active learners, kids becoming active learners, or more active if they started to. And I was real excited today. I'll just share a quick story with you. I talked to a teacher who's been working a great deal with the idea of this student could communicate, and up until about a year and a half ago, he was very passive. I saw very little communication. He would wheel himself around in the classroom, older student, and he would want to be by people and he'd want to be near there, but the reality was there was no communication going back and forth, not even eye contact, touching, those kinds of things, just very little. And we would see when he was unhappy about something, he was very clearly unhappy. So we started, he had been using pictures, we went back to tactile objects. And one of the things that's so exciting is I got an email from his mom saying he's going to be transitioning into another program next year, and I want to make sure we make sure everything happens so that he doesn't fall back into his passivity. And that's what we're trying to do here by using the different strategies we talked about at the beginning of this series, and then some of the items, some of the things we've been showing you also. And so today we're going to also talk about how do you use experience stories or books to help a student become more active or a child become a more active learner. So with that, let's go on. Just one second. There we go. First of all, I want to put a thank you again to all the children and the family and the service providers who make sharing videos possible. While we all know we are not perfect, it is hard to have ourselves in videos that may have some, ooh, rats, I wished I had, or I hadn't done that. So I certainly know that feeling, and for any of you who've done videotaping or had yourself videotaped, I'm sure you have that same feeling. So when we talk about the videos that we're going to look at today, keep in mind that if I make a comment about something that might have been good to do or might have been good to wait a little bit longer, understand that that is not a criticism of the parent or the service provider. It is simply one of those things that these are learning tools for us to be reminded. And one of you made the comment consistency. That's one of the things you really want to make sure you're doing is being consistent in the routine and then consistent in the data collection. And that consistency is huge. So I just want to go back and do a couple things about concept versus skill. I think sometimes this gets confusing to people, and I'm not going to even suggest that that you're going to get it all today. But I think all of us have an idea of what a concept is, but I want to talk about it being kind of something that's conceived in your mind. It's a thought or a notion. It's a concept, okay? It's an abstract or a general idea that you've generalized from particular experiences. A flower, this yellow flower is also this pink flower, and this thing over here, which happens to be pink and white and smells really good, is also a flower, so that I start to generalize out that idea. For those of us who may be math challenged, when I was in school, algebra was like that. I memorized what I was supposed to memorize. I had no idea what it had to do with my life. I could not bring it in, and the teacher I had didn't bring it in, or at least not to my knowledge, didn't bring in what the benefit is, how to connect it to me, and have me be able to connect it with other concepts to fit it together and understand. a mental representation or an image or an idea of concrete objects, as well as intangible, such as our feelings. And then the skill, and this is so often what we see on IEPs, are the child's going to do such and such, okay, which is fine. This child will be independent in their toilet training. And then there might be some objectives under it that are going to help that child achieve that skill. It's a learned power of doing something competently. It's a developed aptitude, or it's a developed ability. It's a learned physical task. So here's my question. I want you to think back over the last 4 weeks, for those of us who can remember the last 4 weeks of our life. I'd like you to think about, what is one concept that you heard that you are thinking, maybe I need to think differently about this, or this is a concept I've never heard of before. What are some of those concepts that may have come to you as you've watched the videos, as you've thought about some of the information shared? Learned helplessness. Thanks, Heather. That's a concept, okay? Let's see what else, what wait times may be, and that they vary. The self-empowerment in the little room. Just being able to make choices. A new concept of taking data in the little room to increase the possibility. Not a new concept, but a great reminder of how important relationship is. Object representation. Those are all concepts. Those are ideas and thoughts. Learning on the nonverbal part of communication. The idea of concepts like cold, wet, dry. That's vocabulary too, but it's also a concept. So now I want you to think about skills. What I'd like you to do is, I'm going to go to the next slide, and I want you to think about a skill that, this is a skill for some children, the idea that they can now sit, that they're not lying down or being propped up, but they can actually sit. Okay, but I want you to think back to the concepts you just shared, and I'd like you to think about a skill that you have been shown, or a skill that you have already learned, or are in the middle of learning, of helping a student become a more active learner. Great, thanks Amy. Hand under hand, that's a skill. It can also be a concept. The concept of hand under hand is there as well as the skill. Sometimes they're together. Right, hand under hand's an easy, that's probably the easy one for us to identify. Turn taking, great. And the turn taking might not look like we're playing fish and I have to wait for my turn. Being in the right place to learn. Okay, I have to get there, I have to be there. Imitating or mimicking the child. Now I've learned to start to imitate the child back so that he knows there's someone here connecting with him. Thanks, Janine. Those are skills. They may also be concepts, so don't get yourself lost in, well, which one's the concept and which is the skill. The skill is, can I do it? The concept is, oh, that's a new concept about imitating the child instead of the child imitating me. Going at the child's pace. Wait time. That's a skill. There's some concepts that we gave you some tips about it, but it is a skill. Making a choice. All right, great. So we're going to use sit as an example. And so here are all the different kinds of things that you can sit on, and I only picked a few things. And then what happens is In concept development, it's on mom's lap, it's in a high chair, it's in a car seat, it's on dad's lap, it's on chairs in a conference, it's on the roller coaster. Slang like, oh, sit on it. Or future, past, and now, the idea of I sat, I am sitting, and I will sit. Those are all different kinds of things, and you can see a variety of adjectives in there too. So this is the concept. If I only think I sit, if I'm in this special chair, and that's the only time you mention sit to me, whether you sign it, say it, or give them some kind of a tactile indication or a tactile symbol. So think about that on mom's lap, the high chair, on the rocking horse. So I'm going to just very quickly. So this is a spoon. I hope I'm holding it up close enough or far enough away. All right. So the idea is this is a spoon. Now, if I give you a larger spoon with a wider handle, it is still a spoon. I might not use it to put in my mouth to eat because it's too big. I might have a wooden spoon, and I'm teaching people that, oh yeah, we're going to make muffins today, and we're going to use this big wooden spoon to stir things. Those are all spoons. If you only use the word or the sign or the action or the tactile symbol that represents only one spoon, then there are a zillion things out there that that child still doesn't know, even if they can see it. Okay? So let's take reading for an example too, because I really want to pull this into literacy and the idea that you can do active learning in other ways. Okay? So with reading, there's the concept of reading books, reading a picture schedule, reading a schedule at the top left-hand corner that you can actually push, and it says what the schedule is. Down in the lower right-hand corner, it's the reading of picture symbols. And in the upper right-hand corner, it's reading a cookbook. So think about the idea of reading in many different ways instead of the idea that the only way you can do reading is like the young man in the lower left-hand corner who is doing reading. So once again, all these different concepts that are mulling around at school, it might be noisy. You might select a book. You might read a book about my own experience. With mom, it might be reading in bed at night. With a friend, it might be their nice voice, favorite books. In a library, quiet. Steps in an activity with a sequence. First we do this, next we do that, next we do that. There's so many different concepts, and the idea is that you're thinking about those and seeing which ones you want to reinforce. So I miswrote this, and so I want to clarify. I said, let's think about the skill of being toilet trained. Let's change that to, let's think about the skill of being an independent person who can toilet themselves. So I'm independent. But the first phase of getting the diapers changed when the child's wet is at the beginning end of being independent. So the following concepts are ones the child needs to have in order, in that very beginning part, in order to move on. A, knowing when his diaper is dry. B, knowing when his diaper is wet. C, getting someone's attention. And D, both A and B. And Michaela's going to switch over down above, right below the participant window. You see the check and the X. There's going to be multiple choice for A, B, C, or D. And if you would just check which one it is that you think is the answer. Great. Okay, D. And some of us would think about it being B, and that actually would not be totally wrong either. And that is the idea that if I know what wet is, I contrast it with something such as what is dry. How do I know what wet is if I don't know what dry is? So those are some of the things you want to think about. Gee, if I'm teaching them that when they're wet, that I want them to indicate in some way that they are wet, that they need to be aware of that concept of wet before they're going to be able to become independent enough to let you know they need to go to the bathroom or that they are wet. It may be that that's the next step for them, is to let you know I'm wet. Okay. Now, let's think about the skill of being toilet trained or independently toileting again, that first phase. So here's the question. Whoops. What is C? And I'm just trying to bring this up. And so what is C? If the answer was A and B, what is C? Getting someone's attention. Is that a concept or is that a skill? So what I'd like you to do is, I don't know, something. So if you think it is a concept, put a green, whoops, I gotta wait for it to switch back. Yeah, thank you. If you think it's a concept, put a green check. If you think it's a skill, put a red X. So why did all of you who put the red X, why did you identify that as a skill of getting someone's attention? And some of you said it's actually both. So there's the concept of my understanding I have to get someone's attention, and then there is the skill of my getting someone's attention. And the skill is raising your hand, if you raise your hand. I mean, there are many other ways I can get someone's attention, but I'm physically doing something. There's an action that I'm doing. Thanks, Tanya. That physical action is what turns that into a skill. And I use this as an example because so many times for our students who have multiple disabilities, pretty significant, what happens is I'll say, so how does the child get your attention? And the answer is, well, he doesn't have to because I'm always there. And if we're looking at hoping to increase the child's independence and their active participation, then we want to be thinking about, gosh, should I always be there? Or do I need to help him find a way to get my attention? Whether it's simply vocalizing or putting his hand on mine and my leaving my hand right next to him. So if he is very poor, if he's not able to move his hands much, that his finger can come over and touch me to get my attention. What are the ways we can do that? And a skill is acquired by experience. And thanks, Pat, that's exactly right. It is repeating something again and again and again so that it can be a skill. So let's look at an experience book made by a family for their 3-year-old child who has multiple disabilities. What are the concepts? Now I want you to go back and think about the concepts or the ideas. It's not the individual skill, the physical action of the child, but what are the concepts that you might be working on in this experience that was made by the family? This is the first page, and for this, just so those of you are aware, there was not contrasting background because of the fact that this child was totally blind. So this was Daddy, and on the front there's just some material that is kind of rough, like his beard. This is the next page, which is Mommy, and she always wears these beads around her neck, and that's how the child knows that it's Mommy. That's how they've been teaching him. This is his sister, and she happens to have very long, straight hair. And so this was not her hair. We cut it off of a messed up horse doll. I keep everything that breaks down just for that reason. Just a second. There we go. And the next page is Bobo, the child's favorite toy, and it's felt like, and this happens to be Bobo, okay, and when Bobo is dropped, you can hear him. He makes a funny little noise, and that's the child's favorite toy. And the last page of this is the nipple from one of his bottles. So that's the end of his book. It's a very short, simple book that the family made. So what I'd like you to do is think about this and say, gosh, if I were doing this experience book with the child, what are the concepts I might be trying to get to? Not just by doing this one book, but what are some of the concepts I'm working on for this child? The concept of family. Other concepts? Tactile recognition of things at home. Okay, now there is a concept connected with that as well as a skill. Touch and taste. Identifying textures. If I physically show you that I know what those textures are, that becomes a skill. Boy and girl is a good one. Home is a good one. That symbols can represent things. Great. So that's going to be that overriding thing I'm trying to get the child to get to, knowing that these symbols, these tactile, tangible symbols, are things that can represent just the same as a picture or a sign or a word. To represent once. Maybe at some point this child then uses this to open the book to his favorite toy because he can't find it where it is normally and let you know, I want this. It also gives an opportunity for the family to be sitting with the child or a brother or sister sitting with the child and actually reading a book and turning to pages. The idea that what is a book? So that concept of bookness. So those are some of the things we start looking at. So family members and their names, smooth, rough, bumpy, soft. So when we're turning that and he gets to Bobo, his favorite toy, and that's felt and it's soft, and we might be saying, yeah, that's soft, right? Or, ooh, that's smooth. Natalie's hair is smooth. Or straight, whatever word we want to use, but we want to repeat it and use it consistently again. What he likes or his preferences. Oh, I know you just love your sister Natalie, or you just love Bobo, or you just love your bottle, and maybe it's 8 o'clock at night and he is wanting his bottle to go to sleep by. So those are things that you can be thinking about. What are the concepts? And do I want to keep repeating those concepts so that that child starts to build a body of experience, as I think it was Janine talking earlier, building that body of experience so that I can use those concepts and that experience to turn it into skills. Okay. So this is often what we think about when we think of books and children. With additional experience, with different needs of children, we might think of these as reading. Here's a schedule at school, a schedule at home, a 4-step routine schedule of lining up and going to PE, a schedule and a photo album with only 2 things per page so that the child doesn't get overwhelmed with too many things. It might be too cluttered for him. Too many choices. Whoops, I held that down. A vertical schedule with a pocket to put pictures in when that activity is finished at the bottom. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Isn't it interesting how we immediately go to pictures as a way for the child to communicate? And in the experience book examples on our website, and if any of you have gone to some training on experience books, we really push the idea that we often go to pictures, especially for children who have vision, but I've even seen it for kids who have visual problems, because it's convenient, because it's easier, because it's more portable. It's hard to drag along a bunch of tactile things when you go somewhere. So you have to start thinking about, okay, how can that work? But for the student that I shared at the very beginning with you about, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that the team went from showing pictures that we could not see the child had better than a 50-50 chance, and these were pictures of his favorite things to do. And we dropped back to some tactile symbols that were attached to those pictures, and within days, this child was using 4 of those tactile symbols consistently for things that he liked. And he'd go grab them off the board and bring them over. So we were very clear that going back to tactile symbols made a difference for him. I think that it's so crucial that we think about that. I also want to remind you that there are actually some, I'm actually going to have us put on the end of this PowerPoint some information about 3 different things that relate to concept development. Great articles for those of you who want more help with it and want to understand it better, and give you some ideas. We will put those on a PowerPoint slide at the end of this when we send it to you tomorrow. But we're also going to put it up in the chat window. One is by Barbara Miles, who is a phenomenal person working with kids who have significant disabilities, including vision and hearing issues. Another one is by Jim Durkle out of Texas, and he talks, what a concept, that's the title of his article. And so those URLs will come up, but I also want you to know that we will put them at the end of the PowerPoint and send that out tomorrow also. PEC seems to use only board maker type pictures, and I wonder why objects aren't or are used more. Jean, I want to make sure I get aren't. Okay. I think what it is people don't quite know what to do with it. And sometimes what they do is they use little miniatures, or they say to themselves, well, the child can see it. Well, the child's vision may be able to see it. The question is, can I put meaning to it? And for those of us who have worked with PECs and other kinds of picture communication systems, unless there were words with it, there are times that I can't tell you what that picture is supposed to mean. I'll use the example of the one where the person's reaching up onto a shelf and there are 3 blocks or boxes or squares or something up on that shelf. And the idea is to either put or to take. It makes no sense to me and I've got all this understanding, and it makes no sense. So we jump into pictures. And so one of the things that we've also tried with kids is and instead of doing pictures, we've gone back to things like Polaroid. And of course, Polaroid is very old-fashioned, but you can just do regular photos. And if you can get good contrast in those, you can sometimes find, especially if you put the child in the picture, so if she's supposed to be brushing her teeth, then this is a picture of her brushing her teeth. And all of a sudden, she's starting to recognize. We especially look at that as a possibility when I hear that the kids love to look through the photo albums at home. And I start thinking, gosh, if they're looking through the photo albums, what is it? Or is it just the turning of pages? Don't make an assumption the child can see that and then reason out the concept and the meaning. And I think that's what we often jump. And then what size picture does it need to be? The little 1 inch by 1 inch, or the 2 inch by 2 inch, or 3 inch by 3 inch, or 4 inch by 4 inch? And don't assume that going big is going to necessarily help that child. It isn't. It may be that you need some time to do the tactile with the picture or the photo, and then you can take away or put the photo on the opposite side and eventually just show them the photo. And if they all of a sudden recognize it and know what they're doing, then you can start to remove tactile symbols. Okay. So what are experience books? These are some examples. Focusing on an experience the child has. They're created with a specific child in mind. The book that I showed you, that was created with a specific child in mind. This was not a book to make for every child. Allowing the child to share and review an experience again and again and again. That's called memory. We're working on repetition and memory. Those are skills we want the child to have. And we want him to know that as he consistently repeats that story, what happens with the children in your own home who have no disability, their favorite stories are the ones, we get sick to death of reading because we've read it so many times, but boy, they want to master it and they want to repeat it and they want to enjoy it. Building that child's concepts, sequence of actions, and communication. That's why we do this, so they can be active in the process of reading. A book about the individual which is motivating to him or to her. Okay? Motivating to them, not motivating to me. Oh boy, I want to do a book all about going to the bathroom because I want this kid toilet trained. That's not what this is about. This is about an experience book that motivates the child. Now, if you happen to be lucky enough to have a child who's motivated by toileting, great, but not many of them. And what is in it for the child? In other words, what do experience books do for the child? What I'd like to do now is show you one experience book that was done with a young man, and have you take a look, and I will explain some of the objects that are used because it's tough to see in this. This is not him. It's tough to see in that video, but there are objects for every picture in the book. And this was done for a student at high school age, and so understand that some of the writing would not be the writing we would do if we were doing it with a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old. So we've got the picture there. This is Ryan working with an adult in his classroom. So let's push play now. So in this, there are objects for every page, and you may have missed that the object where Christy helps him get in his wheelchair, there was a barrette, a brown one that almost faded into the book, but that barrette she has in her hair all the time, and he has touched that. So he represents Christy he associates Christy with that barrette. Then the next page, you saw a little black, if you could see it, again, it was hard to see, but it was a little black piece of foam, round foam, that goes over the handlebars of the bike. And then that blue swirly plastic thing actually is a very abstract representation for the fact that he loves to go in circles and have people pull him in circles. That is the one object so far that he has not picked up to do specifically and asked somebody to do that. But he has used the others, and he has associated them. So sometimes, and I'm just going to take us a step further, because I want you to remember that we're talking about matching, sequencing, categorizing, all these things through an experience book. It matters to him. The photos, in some cases, it's the person showing him the photo, but it's the object that they put with the photo that makes the difference for him. We don't see that he recognizes everybody in a photo, and you can't always get great contrast in all the photos. But for him, he will go and he will grab that black piece of foam, meaning I want to, and he doesn't pull it out of the book. He has one where his communication board is. He pulls it and gives it to you, meaning I want to go ride my bike. And then something that happened to me recently was the idea that this one child kept, signing mama, mama, mama. And we made the assumption that she wanted to see her mama, and somebody, and it was a student actually, high school student, who said, are you sure she wants to go see her mama, or do you think maybe she wants to tell you something about her mama? And that's what the experience book is about, is that we give children an opportunity to talk about something that is not present. And that's another piece about being able to move along. Okay, so what is it in this for the child? What does an experience book do for them? He gets to have access to stories that are appropriate to his concepts and communication needs and his abilities. He gets to do that. And you can do books in many different forms. This happened to be something that was commercially picked up. The family did not continue making books with those, but they used some old folders that they found and actually did one for every page. So you can use so many different things. You can use a 3-ring notebook. So keep in mind that those stories can look different. They can be in different kinds of materials. It provides a source of individualized printed material that is appropriate to the visual, the tactile, the conceptual, and the communication needs of the child. And that's a very important point, is that it needs to be connected to him. It facilitates learning concepts and vocabulary. It provides a basis for conversation. So I come home, I'm the mom, I come home at the end of the day because I work, and we sit down and we read a book together, just like I have read for my other 3 children who don't have disabilities. And sometimes it's about reading that book and having 2 of the brothers and sisters with you, and all 4 of you are reading together. It allows the child and the adult to be on an equal level of sharing and understanding, and that communication takes 2 or more people. There are so many times when you are in a classroom and you go and you hand the picture to the child, or the child is expected to hand the picture to you, and so you put your hand out, and you don't even make eye contact or joint tactile connection. It's just, there's no peace about having a relationship or communication. And that's what this gives you, is an opportunity to do that. And you can make book after book working on the same concepts for that child. Right. Pictures help the child relive and learn from everyday and special experiences. So it could be my birthday party, and I get to relive my birthday party for as long as I want to relive my birthday party. But we get to talk about it, and that's when the child starts to do something more than here and now. I want, I don't want. That's like right here and now. And when you're working on communication, which this is not a discussion, but there's no way to ignore communication no matter what you're doing, you want to make sure that that child has an opportunity to become more abstract. It provides opportunities for the child to demonstrate memory skills, matching, sequencing, and categorization skills. I've seen families that when that child has read that book again and again with the family, it's one of his favorites, they pull all the items from the pages. And that child has memorized the sequence of, I know it's the first one is here, the second was on the second page, and I know this goes on the third page. And they demonstrate that they have sequencing skills. How many of us are lucky enough to be able to demonstrate that a child who is nonverbal actually has sequencing skills? Not very many of us. So there's so many different ways you can do sequencing or categorization. If we have two books that we've read and read and read, and one's about my favorite food and one's about my favorite animals, we can sit there and put all of those tactile objects into a box, and I can pick them out and sort them into the right book. And I demonstrate that I have categorization skills. It provides for the transition into the more abstract concepts such as time and place. The child starts to understand that we're talking about my birthday party. It happened a long time ago. And one of the families said to me, yes, but every time we start to look at her birthday book, then she cries because she wants the birthday party. And I said, yeah, most of us would. But the reality of it is it's a chance for us to say, oh yeah, so that eventually when I use those objects, it's not necessarily that I'm going to get it right now. I'm going to get that cookie, or I'm going to get to go outside and play. It prepares the child for the development of reading. And, and Lamb said learning to read is a developmental process that begins at birth. So the child can't be too young for this. And for those of you who are thinking about the idea of, oh gosh, then I could do pictures because this child has vision. At 3 months, I'm going to say to you, the child needs to be experiencing and exploring things. And by having the tactile stuff there, then that child has an opportunity to explore it at whatever level he or she can. Don't assume that this is just, tactile objects are just for kids who have vision problems. Now, we're going to go ahead and see another video. And this one is a student who is making a book. So many times people say, well, how do I find the time to make all these experience books? You don't. What you do is you check with the family to find out if they've had some special experiences and the child especially loved something. And you might start out with just a 2 or 3 page book. And you can always add to books. And think in terms of, this is going to take some, this child may be fairly rough with the book, so you want to think about, what do I need to do when I'm making it? But this is Raylyn and an adult making a book, an experience book. She had this experience, they have the pictures, and now they're going ahead and creating the book itself. So, making experience books can include new skills and concepts, and it doesn't take you sitting down at night or getting up early in the morning to make it. You make it with the child. The child finds out how books happen. Okay, push play now.
Here's our paper, nice and thick. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Put your hand under mine. Let me show you. Ready? Here we go. Squeeze. Got to get that glue on there. Squeeze. Hang on. Here we go. Push. 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 Now we just have to let our book dry. And then we'll put rings in it. And you can help me do that after it dries. All done. All done. All done.
Okay, so here's Raylyn working with the adult to make a book. It is not the adult is coming in to work with her. She's on a consult basis. It's not like she's got, she sees her, works with her all day. But for the people who do, they can start making the books about the experience the child has, whether it's at home or whether it's at school. Now, if the family's willing to make the experiences that happen at home, that's great. That's wonderful. And you can exchange and share those books with each other, or even duplicate them in some cases. But they really have to be duplicated specifically. Otherwise, the child who may be looking at it or who may be tactily touching it and recognizing it are going to have some difficulties. I also know a child who puts the books in her mouth a lot. So they ended up using plastic to coat certain things, not the objects, but to coat the whole book so that each page was one that if she stuck it in her mouth, oh well. But the objects were still on the outside. So considerations when you're making an experience book with the child: learning proceeds from the concrete to the semi-concrete to the abstract. So in Ryan's case, he is not recognizing that blue swirly piece of plastic yet because it doesn't have a reference for him. He doesn't know what that really means. It's not something we can put into a tactile item. The other thing is doing miniatures are not very useful to kids. We see the whole thing. Maybe they see the whole thing, but because that miniature is not the size of what the child normally sees, they don't necessarily put the concept together. Use actual objects or materials associated with the activity. So if you all went to McDonald's, then you might bring the French fry container back because that happens to be what the favorite thing the child ate at McDonald's, or the cup. So you can fold it or smush it at some level, or cut it in half and glue it onto the page. Later, once the comprehension for the child is solid, it may be appropriate to move to pictures, but don't jump too fast on that one. Make sure that child really has it. The other thing you can do is sometimes go to partial objects or a smaller object. Make that object a little bit smaller. The experience is one the child had and enjoyed. Okay, enjoyed is the operative word. If it was not enjoyed, do not make a book about this. My trip to the dentist, I don't even enjoy those. Make sure your language in the book is appropriate to the child's comprehension level. Now, make it simple, make it age appropriate, and make it repetitive, so that you're saying the same words, okay, or you're signing the same words, or you're tactily having the child touch that same item when you're saying the word. Involve the child in the production of the book as much as possible. That was Raylyn's very first book to help make, so you could see that Robin was working with her to help her learn how it is. Now, I might have used more hand under hand with her, but if Raylyn doesn't have enough experience of understanding hand under hand and being able and following it, then it would be tough for me to do it while I'm trying to glue it. At the same time, I'm trying to take a finger and bring her hand with me. That may be too much in the beginning. So you have to kind of play with that and see how it works. Considerations Also, if an item is not staying glued in the book, which often is the case, use a Ziploc bag or an envelope secured to the front of the book that has the items in it. So when you get to that page, the child can bring the item that relates to that page. Initially, one primary concept per page is appropriate. Don't try to teach, this is a member of your family, this is a girl, this is a this. Pick one. And it doesn't mean you can't go back at a later time and use some other ones. And initially, make the book short. Most of the students we're talking about working with, they're going to have a hard time staying with you for long books. It's one of the problems. So the approach to developing experience books, we talked about the concrete to the abstract. We talked about the fact that you see the girl in the center, and that's where the concrete is. It is about her. It's that child's specific experience using her strongest sensory channels and what is fascinating to him or her. That's part of it. The daily routines, you can then start to move out a little bit, and daily routines like music, recess, circle time. You might have 4 different things that happen in circle time, and so you want to make a book about it. Experiences that occur frequently, including the daily routines. That's another thing you can do it as long as it's a routine and experience she likes or he likes. So you're slowly moving out to the more abstract. And then you get to things that, activities that have more abstract concepts, activities that are more consistent with peers, but still child-specific. The idea that I could make this one book and it could work for all 4 of the students in my class is not necessarily going to work. Now, it might, but it also might not, because what that item, that tactile item means to one child may not mean that at all to the other. So if I'm a child, I'll just give a quick example. If I'm a child and I know how to feed myself, then a spoon may have some meaning, okay? And using a spoon, or it might be this type of a spoon, okay? Or it might be a partial spoon. It might just be the part of the spoon that's here. However, what if I'm tube fed and I don't take anything by mouth? Will the spoon mean anything to me at this point? No. It might be that I will touch the tube for feeding, and therefore a piece of tube might mean feeding for me and eating for me. So you have to look at each individual child and say, what does it mean to me? What does it mean to the child? So those, and you're always wanting to move out from home and school in the very classroom, and as the child moves out into other classes, you get further away from the child. No, you get further away and you're able to do activities and make books that relate to other things that are not just right now about me. It might mean it's my time in music, and maybe 3 of the 4 pages that we make are exactly the same as the other 2 students that I'm with. But the 4th page, it's different for all 3 of us. Let me just stop for a second. I'll give you, this is another example. Let me see if I showed all the examples I wanted to. Here's another thing about the concepts. You know, we talk about wet and dry, and I would like to ask the question, what concept do you think this toy might represent? Remember, not a skill that I can open and close it. What kind of a concept does this represent that I might need to be learning about, whether I'm in a little room or it's hanging from a triangle board, whatever? What would you say? Big and little. We can make it big, we can make it little, okay? Pull, the concept of pulling, open and close. And here's one that we don't think about a lot, Cause and effect, fast and slow, good. I can control something, good one. Stretch, tight, open. Objects can change their shape. Now think about that. Why would that concept be a good one for me to learn? Not just with this, but with a variety of things, that an object can change its shape. Why? Why would that matter? Generalization skills. I'm generalizing that I now know that things aren't always exactly the same. Anybody else? Yeah, it's that tactile discrimination. It could be visual discrimination of the things that things can change. Food changes its shape. Okay, if I mash a banana versus having an actual banana to eat, they're still bananas, but they change shape. They're different from each other, but they're the same. That concept, it's about all of that learning that we have been talking about for 4 weeks of developing concepts for that child to experiment and to become an active learner. I have to play with things. I have to explore things. I have to do things all on my own, not with your help. And that's the concept of some of the items we've been talking about and the strategies we've been talking about. Just 1 second. So here's one more example of an experience book, and this was one that was developed for a music class in a middle school. So this is called a tactile book. It's an example. It's made out of pieces of pegboard. It sits on a stand. It helps the student because if they have any problems turning those really thin paper pages, this is made out of pegboard, and so it gives you, it's heavier. It gives the student more feedback. Okay. Now, this was a story about playing musical instruments, and these were African instruments that the class had. And this is something the student loved. Student loved music of any sort, sounds, unusual sounds. So we made some tactile we made some actual tactile representations. And let me go back, and I'm going to assume you can tell which ones might represent which ones. So we have a thumb drum that has metal. We have a rain and a drum. And then we have the shell shaker. So think about those, and you can probably see that it's a partial part off of some instruments. And again, these are instruments that broke, so they were used. So this was it. We made up this story. To be honest with you, we just sort of threw it out. And so it was music. We found a picture on the internet. What is that sound? The boy asked, what is that noise? That's not noise, it's a shell shaker. Ooh, I like it. So it's making it as a story. That's all it is. And you can do with it how you want. And you can see on the opposite page, there's one of the representations. The man said, what is that sound? That's a drum. I like it. So we're doing repetitive kinds of things that all of you have seen in stories, but it's not babyish. The woman said, what is that? Well, that's a small hand drum. I like it. Here we go, the repetitive piece again. So that's how the story goes, and it continues to go. That's a hand drum, and then that's the thumb drum. That was the metal piece. And then it says, let's listen to all those sounds and make music, and that's what they were doing in the music class. Now, this happened to be in a self-contained classroom of students in middle school. It was not in a music class of general ed students, so I want to be clear with that. So once again, that's another way that you can do these experience books, and you can make them. And peers can come into the classroom and read it with the student also. And you can very easily pull the paper off of that. All it was placed on with some of that thin putty, museum putty that you can put it on. It comes off easily. It's not taped or Velcroed on. Okay. So I'm going to go back. So we're going to see Joel and his mom doing music, and we're going to watch this videotape. But what I want you to do is I want you to be thinking about. Imagine that you're going to make an experience book with Joel based on this video with Mom. Okay? And think about how many pages would you want to use? What are maybe the objects and or pictures that you would use for this story so that he and you could read about the story and maybe even do what he and Mom are doing together as another way. Oh, I don't just do music with my mom. I can do music with you too, and you understand. So keep that in mind as you're watching this video. All right, so let's push play now.
You want to sing songs? You want to sing music? Music. Which song? Way up high in the apple tree, I saw two apples looking at me. So I as hard as I could, and down came the apples, and they were good, good, good. Do you want more music? More? Show me more. More. Which song? Oh, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Oh, you want clap, 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 clap your hands together. Clap, clap, clap your hands. Clap your hands together. Clap a little faster now. Want to clap your hands. Clap.
Okay, so here's the question to those of you who could see this video. Number one, just put a green check if you think that making an experience book about him singing songs makes sense. Does it appear to be something he likes? Okay, so it passed the first question, and that is, it is something he likes. Here's the next question for you. If you were going to make a book with him, how many pages do you think you would probably make based on that short clip? Maybe 5 to 7, 3, 3, 3, 1 to 3, 3 to 4, 1 per song, 3 pictures of a tree and pictures of apples, 1 per song, 4, 3 to 4. I think for those of you who are looking for 3 to 4, I think that makes sense. I think the comment about the fact of 1 per song, 1 page per song. Okay? Now, I want you to think about the song that they sang, which was Way Up High in the Apple Tree. My first question is, and put a green check, do you think that he has done this activity with his mother more than once or twice? Okay, so now here's the question, why? Why do you think that? He showed anticipation, right. He started to even wiggle his body before Mom got there. So he was anticipating. He was predicting. So that means Mom was consistent enough about this with the different hand motions and the different body motions that clearly this is an activity that they enjoy doing together. Enjoy is the operative word. She waited for him to initiate some of the motions. Right. Great. He has the body motions to accompany that. Good. So, that's correct. So my question is, what if you were going to do an object on one page that was going to represent the apple tree song, what might you put on there? A branch of a tree, there's a possibility. A tree, a smiling apple, an apple, bark of a tree, a fake apple, bark, an apple tree. Now, Tanya, I'm going to pick on you, and I hope you're okay with this because I trust you. Would you say, why would you pick bark? It's tactile. Right. It's tactile, and also it's obviously the part of a tree that the child could actually touch. I can't get a sense of a whole tree, but I can get a sense of the bark representing tree. Same thing with a branch, a small branch that you wanted to use. Also, some of you were suggesting like the possibility of an apple, and I'll just show one here. This happens to be a book that has sound with it, and so you can record each page so that this apple does not feel like an apple. It is not a real apple, okay? But it can start to represent an apple. This little boy, I know, happens to love green apples, and so that was one of the things that was used. Is it the only thing you can use? No. I mean, obviously, all of you have thought of things that you could do to make that book. And if the pieces don't fit well in the book you're using, then have that plastic baggie attached to it so you can open it up and have it be part of the book. You might have a picture there so that somebody else who's reading the book with him would know what to say. So you might have it printed. For a child who's blind, you might have it brailled so that they could feel the braille. But I would also have it printed for the person who's there so that they can read it to them and say the same repetitive words that Mom does. So I'd want to make sure that book fits in with what Mom says. And what I've often found is if I don't videotape the parent or I don't just listen to them do it and quick write it, they can't tell me what they said, what they say all the time. It's just natural for them. Same thing as it is natural for us when we're in the classroom and we've developed something. It becomes natural. So those are things that you want to think about. And then if you're going to turn the page, what would you guess one of his strongest sensory channels, and I'm going to suggest we're talking the sensory channels of hearing, vision, tactile, touch, okay, smell, taste, proprioceptive, movement kinds of things, and vestibular would be movement. What do you think are probably his strongest ones based on what you saw? So one person says hearing and then the vestibular tactile. Hearing and vestibular. Hearing, vestibular, proprioceptive, tactile, movement. Tactile and hearing, right. For him to really enjoy this as much as he does, that movement piece is very important to him, and so is the auditory, because he could anticipate as Mom was starting to say things to him. So I want to use those. So I might want to go ahead in and put an auditory piece in so that on each page, even though there may be something that represents the apple tree or represents, the next one was row, row, row your boat, and then the next one was, Okay, jump in here, people. The third one was, clap your hands. Okay, so that one. So that might be the issue of hands. Okay, and there might be hands there, but you can also do something very simple like this, and it's just like a little voiceover mic thing that you can stick on each of the pages with Velcro, and then you can push it and clap your hands together. So that when you're reading it, you may not do the whole song, and I'm not sure if you could all hear that, but that was me just recording in there in my beautiful voice. And someone's asking, is that from APH? No, it isn't, and I'm trying to remember where it's from, but I'll tell you what, I've got it written down, so I'll stick it on one of the PowerPoint slides that Michaela sends out tomorrow so that you'll know where you can get those. And they're very simple and they're pretty inexpensive. So those are some things that you can think about. What is the kids' strong sensory channel? Because that should have something to do with how I make the book, no matter which kind I make. And then I want to just mention the other, see if I can bring this other book up. And this book, oops, it's the wrong book, hang on. And so this book, as we talked about getting further away from what's just immediately happening to the child, that we will eventually get to things that are happening or that a child can do, it could be an art experience book. So this one says, find the scissors, and the scissors is here. It's inside a pocket. You can just buy these at Office Depot or whatever. And then find the foam paper, so the child pulls out the foam paper. Next one is find the glue stick, and the glue stick is in here in the pocket. And then find what you want to put on your paper. So then the child has all these different things they can select to put on their paper. And then the last one is, who do you want to give your picture to? And then there's a picture of Mommy and Daddy. And if you could see, these are movie stars that I got off the internet since I didn't want to use any families' pictures. So those are also experience. That's an art experience book. So it doesn't have to just stay, but in the beginning it needs to be specifically directed to, I'm sorry, I just saw your note. Yes. Okay, so that's it's just a 3-ring notebook. Can you see better this time? So that's the statement underneath it. And then inside the pocket is where the item is. So this one says, find the glue stick. But the book is just a 3-ring notebook. That's all it is with these pages. Okay. Yeah, are the pockets paper? Yeah, it's that heavier paper. It's not quite manila, like manila folders, but it's almost that heavy. And you can get like a pack of 10 of those. Let me just check here. The photo of the book shows the listen to those sounds. I'm sorry, I'm missing on that one, Jean. Can you clarify? Oh, okay, so maybe you guys are stuck on, oh, I didn't move it. Now is it changed, Sarah and you guys? Okay, yeah, I just moved over to a print slide. What I was doing was holding the book, a 3-ring notebook, up in front of the screen, and I think that may be the problem. And what I'll do is have Katie get this on the website pretty quickly, and that way people can see it also. So if you developed, I want you to think about this because this is always the driving question for me. If you were to develop and use experience books as a way to help a child become a more active learner, and they have to be meaningful to the child, and you use them as frequently as other children in the class do, what child outcomes or child's actions would you expect to see? What are you thinking that you would see? Sequencing would be increased, concept development, anticipation, closure. So when something's over with, my being able to pull it together, more initiation, excitement about learning, confidence in their activities and their movements and their actions, more participation. Pre-reading skills, right. How do I open a book? How do I turn the page? Those are simple concepts, and then they become skills as the child learns to do it, so that they will be more motivated to find more things to share. Because we work with some students who have some very limited likes. And if we can't help move them towards other things to like, part of the reason we can't get them to move is they can't connect it. Out here in space are all these little experiences they've had, but nothing repetition and consistently done the same way, and therefore they can't pull them together and turn them into a concept. They just don't. And even the children that you're working with who have multiple disabilities who see, do not make assumptions that those kids can conceptually go to a flat piece of paper with line drawings and have them mean something, because they don't. They need some help making those connections. Those are the things that we're talking about as far as being more active learning. And for those of you who can even remember 2 or 3 of the active learning strategies we talked about the first couple times, think in terms of what can you consider. Let me just see how I want to say that, because that's confusing. Let me say it again. So if you're going to do some strategies, what are some strategies you could use while you are actually reading the book with the child, the experience book with the child? What would be some different strategies you could use that we talked about? Wait for the child to initiate. Great one. Other things? First, make sure the child is ready to be an active learner. Are they in an alert state, or are they sleeping? Choose which book to read. They could make a choice once they know what those books are and have read them frequently enough that they can recognize them. Hand under hand. Choices, and which one of the songs do we want to do next? Waiting time. Will they engage in the book on their own? Will they open the book and then look at you to like, hey, look at this page. I want you to see this page. Have the child close the page activity. Right. When is it time to turn it, and when is time to close the book because we're finished? Remember, we've talked about the beginning, the middle, and the end of an activity. Child's likes and dislikes. Do they want you to be close or farther away from you? For some children, excellent point, Pat. You don't necessarily have them sitting on your lap or sitting right next to you. It might be that we're sitting in separate chairs, or I'm not quite as close to you, and maybe I'm there, my hand is there, so that when you want me to engage in reading the book with you, you'll let me know. Sharing the book with a peer. Okay? So those are all things, and please remember that we're going to have you do SurveyMonkey for the last time, And one of the things I would request from you is, could you please make sure that if there are any webinars, any topics for webinars next year that you would like someone to do, that we can arrange for that to happen also. I also want to remind people, because this is a limited amount of time and we can't hit everything. Oh, one teacher I know uses a beanbag or a pillow only for book time, so it's comfortable and tempting to the kids to read. So there's another thing, is setting the environment up to help the child see that. So the recording trainings for this session, as well as 2 other sessions that we did earlier in the fall, will all be up on our website, and you can access them and access the videos in the same way that we've been doing here. And that is, when you see the recording, when you come to a video, you'll need to push play now in order for that to happen. So we do have recording. We have the recordings that are coming up, should be in by the end of February at the latest. Make sure that if you want to, you can also email Michaela or me if you have some specific topics you would like to see done through a webinar training. Sometimes it's easy to do topics and sometimes it's not, so just FYI. Other training opportunities, the Infant and Early Childhood Ed Conference, May 4th through 6th in Tacoma, Washington, will be occurring. And the pre-conference is going to be a toolkit for active learning and successful communication. That's all day long. The Combined Summer Institute, July 11th through 14th in Yakima, and there are websites, and that will be coming with your PowerPoint presentation too, so you'll be able to connect on those. And the directions on how to build the tactile pegboard, yes, I do have them, Michelle, and let's see. Let me talk with Michaela and Katie about this, and we'll see how to get those to you. I'm not sure they're up on the website right now, but we'll double check first, and I would suggest you do that. But we'll put something in the email tomorrow to you about that. Just know that making that tactile book, my husband made one, and he said the directions aren't the best in the world, but he said you can make them, and especially if you have a picture of them. I think that really helps people who are skilled in putting stuff together. They see it and they say, oh yeah, I can see how you can do this. I'd like to thank all of you for participating, and I hope that there has been some value to all of you about it, and about how to help kids become more active learners. And for those of you who have stuck through it with us on a lot of things, on all 3 of these series, we appreciate it, and we really appreciate your comments and suggestions. Any suggestions you have, we'll take into account, and if we can make it happen, we will. And with that, I'm going to say farewell, but we will have some kind of an answer for you about the tactile book. And I know that Jean, you want to type in what you were trying to say, or did you just hit the wrong thing? So once again, if you could do the SurveyMonkey, feel free to email me or to Michaela if you don't want to put it in the SurveyMonkey, but we're thinking about now already for next year and which things we want to offer and how we might want to offer them. So there we go, and with that, hey, I finished early. It's been a joy seeing so many of you involved and hearing from some of you about what you're doing. I always like to hear what people are doing and what differences are being made for their kids. And I can't encourage you to go back and look at those the active learning strategies especially, but also the items, and say, what makes sense for me to do and not, and don't do it all at once. You will drive the kids crazy and yourself crazy. Pick one thing, get the team to support, and be consistent, and then move on to the next thing. Okay, guys, take care. Have a good evening. Bye.